Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you're listening. Welcome to Way Outta Here, the Philly sports podcast with fan perspective from way outside the greater Philadelphia area. My name is Steve Prudente, here with you as always to take you on the journey for the next half hour or so. This is episode 90 of the podcast. Yes, 3.5 years later, finally hitting my 90th episode, only 10 to 100 officially. I know there's been a couple of gut reactions and odds and ends here and there, but this is officially what I'm calling the 90th episode. It's great to hit that milestone, and thank you so much for checking in with me. I'll remind you, before we get into everything today, to subscribe to me on the social media platform of your choice, on Facebook and Instagram, Way Outta Here Podcast, on Blue Sky, Way Outta Here Pod, on the blog, wayoutaherepodcast.blogspot.com, and if you've got any feedback, you can always send an email to wayoutaherepodcast@gmail.com. This is available just about wherever you get your podcasts on Apple and Spotify. A rating would be fantastic, and on Apple, a review would be even more fantastic. Thank you so much in advance. I will begin, as I always do, with the beer of the show. Today's selection is the Southern Tier Irish Coffee Cream Ale, and I'll have more on that at the end of the show. A couple of quick notes, some corrections and updates before I get into the topic and everything else in this episode. Last episode, official episode, I should say, I mentioned Kevin Mannion being the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. It's actually Sean Mannion. I introduced him correctly, but then apparently amalgamated the two together. Former Eagles coordinator Kevin Patullo and Sean Mannion, the new incoming coordinator, put them together. You get Kevin Mannion, I guess. But nonetheless, it is Sean Mannion, who's actually the coordinator of the Eagles going forward, and very excited to have that change. I also wanted to mention on my gut reaction, I might have slipped in there a couple of times that the USA won gold over the USSR in 1980 in the Olympics. They did not. They beat the USSR in the round robin to advance to the gold medal game, where they beat Finland, and the USSR, of course, did win silver. I honestly don't remember who they beat off the top of my head, but I did know that going in, just for whatever reason. I was so excited that we won gold, swept the gold medals on my Gut Reaction podcast. So a couple of quick corrections there. The USA did not win gold over the USSR, even though they did win gold in the 1980 Olympics. And Sean Mannion is the coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. I apologize if that caused any confusion on your end. I wanted to start today's episode off. So the topic for today, if you haven't noticed by the title, is going to be Keep the Positivity, based on my previous podcast about trying to leave behind some of the negative vibes that I saw around the Philly sports universe. I got a great email from a listener, Paul Vachukis, who I used to work stats with in when I worked in television. Paul's a great stats guy, and he checked in with a few insights that I thought were cool to share with you guys, so I will read what he wrote to me. Paul sent this email to wayoutaherepodcast@gmail.com, and I will invite all of you to do the same thing. So he wrote, "Negativity is all about sports. Only one team each year is happy at the end with winning a championship. In the NHL and the NFL, it's 31 out of 32 teams that go home unhappy. In Major League Baseball and the NBA, and I guess he didn't write this, but I will include the MLS, 29 out of 30 teams. So that is 97%, roughly, of fans going home unhappy at the end of each season. The law of averages suggests that every 30 or so years you might win a championship in that sport, in any sport. But it's not just about winning a title. Think about this. In Major League Baseball, if you fail 70% of the time as a hitter, you're still a good hitter, a 300 average. Think about that. In the NHL, 90% of the shots that hit the goalie, only 10% actually go into the net. 900 save percentage, this day and age, is a pretty decent save percentage for a goalie. NBA average, 53% of the shots are missed, so you're shooting 47% from the field. That's considered a good shooting night. NFL average, good passing, 65%. A little more than 6.5 out of 10 passes. So think about success rate there. And then when you consider how much longer of those odds become in winning a championship, Paul says it should be fun. For me, if you're over 50%, that's good for me. Now, None of my Philly sports teams have ever come close to hitting that 50% average, but we've had some good odds of late. I would say, at least in my lifetime, I've seen far more than my parents' generation had, if you add them all up. And even winning the championship, even if you have a really good team, may come down to just a play or two. Think about this. Imagine 3 play outcomes were different for the first Eagles Super Bowl victory. What if Brady makes that catch in the first half? What if Brandon Graham doesn't get that strip sack on Tom Brady? And of course, the big one, what if the Philly is not so special? That really makes you think there. The margin of victory is so small that it can drive you crazy. And you look back to what we just saw in the gold medal game. What if Connor Hellebuck does not absolutely stand on his head and make that paddle save? What if Nathan McKinnon from Team Canada doesn't whiff on a shot that he hits 99 times out of 100? The U.S. does not win that gold medal. So championships are definitely fickle things, and if you go into every season thinking you're going to win the championship, well, you're more than likely going to come out being disappointed. I thank Paul for those insights. I love looking at things from a statistical perspective as well, not just from an emotional perspective, because as the great Zach Berman, formerly of The Athletic, now of PHLY, Philadelphia, said, statistics are like bathing suits. What they show is revealing, but what they conceal is vital. And statistics do tell more of the story there, I think, when it comes down to it. You think about all of the emotions that we invest in being a sports fan, all of the time and energy we put into it. And most of the time, at the end of the year, you're going to come out not feeling so great about it. So when you do, when you get that result that you want, that you ultimately feel and desire for, really appreciate it, because statistically, it's not that likely to happen. So thank you again, Paul, for the email. I appreciate that. Again, I invite you guys to send your emails with any kind of feedback and suggestions to me to wayoutofherepodcast@gmail.com. I'm happy to read it on the show here and talk more about it. I also wanted to mention, before I get into today's true topic, the keeping the positivity, is that I saw a great Facebook post from a good friend and former guest on the show, Bob Falkenstein. He said that the Phillies special 30 for 30, which is a documentary, came out right around the time of the Super Bowl. I'm not going to do a full review on this podcast. It would probably take an entire podcast just to do a review of that. But it was another fantastic installment from the 30 for 30 series, and Bob said that it really had him in his feels. Highly recommended it to everybody. If you have not watched it already, I'm sure a lot of you have, but if you have not watched it already, it was just a fantastic, yet another great look into what was an incredible season and an incredible moment in Philly sports history. And it made me think about this, as that we were talking about moments and how things come down to, how championships come down to specific plays, maybe one or two of them in a game. That this moment, celebrating it, and even though it's been 8 years at this point, it's not just holding up glory for a one-off moment. This was kind of the kickoff to the greatest era of Eagles football that we've seen so far, I personally believe. And so this is a moment that deserves to be celebrated. This is not us just reliving the glory days. Like, the only example I can think of off the top of my head is that every time I go to a Flyers game, I do see some sort of reverence, and deservedly so, for the Broad Street Bullies era. But that was 10 years before I was born. It's something that is almost fantasy to me. This is something that's still very real, and therefore it resonates a lot more with me. So, if you have not watched that documentary, that's my quick elevator pitch review for you to watch it. Really kicked off the greatest era in Eagles history, which led to 2 Super Bowl wins and 3 appearances within the last 8 years. I mean, did you guys ever think we'd see that back when we were toiling in the Rich Kotite, Ray Rhodes, and even some parts of the Andy Reid era, and Chip Kelly? I mean, look how far we've come. So yes, wanted to pass that on as well. Bob with some great insight and appreciation for the Philly special 30 for 30. A lot of those ESPN documentaries, the 30 for 30s, have been fantastic, and this is just another example of that. So take care of some time in your NFL offseason to check that out. Now I will get into current state of Philly sports and why you should try to keep the positivity with it. So I do want to mention that I try not to do too much in the way of analytics on this podcast, because I feel like That's not why people come here to listen to this. They come for the unique perspective of being way outside the Philadelphia area, as my tagline is. But this one is going to be a little bit more, I guess you would say, nuts and bolts with regard to just how I'm seeing things currently with teams, and eventually we'll see some positivity. I hope that you get some positivity out of what I think about this. We'll start with the Sixers. Again, leading with the positivity with the Sixers is a place I didn't think I'd ever be in the history of this podcast, but here we are. 33-27, currently 60 games into the season. Trade deadline did happen just after my most recent podcast. They did end up selling, I guess you could say that. They sold high, quote unquote, on Jared McCain, sending young player to the Oklahoma City Thunder who for a bunch of draft picks, and didn't feel great about that just because it was literally a duck the tax move and get a couple of picks in return for a player that I guess wasn't working out here, but he's so young, I don't really think that he had a true fair chance with the injuries that he had last year. Looked like he was struggling to get healthy and come back, and Oklahoma City has recently a history of showing that they know how to evaluate talent and build a good team. They won the championship last year. They look like they're set up for years to come. So I'm not crazy about that move. It wasn't the worst thing that could have happened, but I didn't love it. And then they did send Eric Gordon to Memphis Grizzlies for some more draft picks, salary dump. As I said, McCain may come back to bite us. That's something we've seen a lot of over our history as 76ers fans. Since the trade deadline, Sixers are 4-6. Tyrese Maxey is continuing to build on his strong season, leading the way in scoring. Made the All-Star team and even got some MVP consideration in that game. VJ Edgecombe did win the Rising Star MVP the same weekend, by the way. Want to mention that. And Tyrese Maxey also recently surpassed Allen Iverson as the all-time leader in Sixers three-point scoring, wearing the throwback Allen Iverson era jerseys, by the way. I haven't really made a big deal of the 25th anniversary celebration of that 2001 team this year. I totally get why the Sixers are doing it. It's certainly a season that I really had a great time watching, and mostly because of what happened at the end of it. While it was disappointing, of course, it was still fun. But at any rate, great for Tyrese Maxey. That's awesome. Young star. He's still got a bright future ahead of him, too. And he's already taken over the career lead in Sixers three-point scoring. Fantastic. The biggest concern I have, though, is that this team, they look like they're becoming dependent on Joel Embiid again, who's once again out with an injury, this time an oblique strain. I still don't trust anything else going on with his body. I give the guy credit for all the stuff that he has fought through. The team is still better with him on it than they are without him, but that's also concerning. Now, the positivity is that other than an absolute boat race, the Knicks absolutely destroyed them a couple weeks ago, the Sixers are still looking relatively competitive, except for in the third quarter. For whatever reason, they can't figure out how to come out of halftime and play well for those 12 minutes. But at their best, they still look like a team that when they're healthy, they could take the East and make a run of it. They're currently sixth in the standings. Paul George coming back in a few games. So we'll see. I'm still not getting my hopes up that this team is going to go to the NBA final and win it, but there's still that chance. And again, to go back to a few podcasts ago, it's way better than last season. And that's a sign of positivity, right? Right. The Flyers, out of the Olympic break. By the way, the Olympic break was a lot of fun. I did kind of largely tune out of other sports other than Olympics during that time. I know the Sixers were still playing and Phillies were ramping up and so on and so forth, but I really did enjoy taking some time away from traditional American sports for a couple of weeks. The Olympics were a lot of fun on the hockey side, of course, both the men and the women winning the gold medals. I did enjoy watching our other athletes compete. I do have like a low-key soft spot for some of these niche sports like skeleton, which is absolutely terrifying to watch. Bobsledding, of course, back in the 90s. Those of you who grew up watching the Cool Runnings movie, Jamaican bobsled team, that was good to watch. I enjoy getting a little bit of that. I think I only get to watch it once every 4 years. that was fun. I did watch a little bit of the figure skating, a little bit of the speed skating, and everything else in between. So I did enjoy the Olympics, but especially the hockey, and no surprise there because we came out on top, and it was really fun to watch, and it looks like our prospects of our Olympic hockey teams are good going forward. The Flyers, to bring this back to the Philadelphia sports universe, are currently at 28, 21, 11, just a little bit under Hockey 500. They've won 3 out of 4 games since they came back from the break. An absolute stinker of a game versus the Washington Capitals last week, which is unfortunately the only game I've been able to sit down and watch since they came back. But the team has improved since then. They haven't exactly been world beaters, but improved nonetheless. The trade deadline for the NHL is on Thursday, so I'm recording this on Tuesday evening. It's March 3rd. Trade deadline is Thursday. Oh, and you know what? Actually, maybe it's Friday. I'll have to look that up. I didn't write it down in my notes, but it is the end of this week. Doesn't change my expectations here. I'm not expecting Danny Briere and Keith Jones to do any kind of like a fire sale. I'm also not expecting them to make a huge splash. So once again, it's kind of rinse and repeat like it's been for the last 3 seasons ever since taking over for the Chuck Fletcher regime, the disaster that was. What I could see the Flyers realistically doing, Rasmus Ristolainen had a fantastic Olympics, and I could see them moving him. But I don't really see any other big names on the roster that kind of jump out as like anybody other teams would want, and anything that they would get in return for any other names, really. So that kind of leaves us in this weird space where it's just going to be, I don't know, I'm expecting a very blah trade deadline. And maybe that's the best place to be, because you have low expectations. All they can really do is surprise you with something good, I think. I don't really see a scenario where they could have a disaster of a trade unless they move Risto for a very low round draft pick, which again, I don't see happening. He's actually upped his stock this year by being healthy and playing well in the Olympics. So there's positivity there. And the other factor in this is that with all the moves throughout the NHL this season, free agency has kind of been diluted. A lot of players that were supposed to be big name tickets in the offseason have signed already. So they're not likely to be trade targets. So I could really envision this Flyers team doing some more trades in the offseason. Maybe a guy like Sean Couturier, who's, God love him, he's been a fantastic Flyer throughout his career, but the injuries have derailed his career. And even though he's the captain, I could see him definitely move in the offseason. That said, they're still only sitting 4 points out of a playoff spot with 22 games to play, and I still think they can do it. I still think that they can put enough wins together and maybe get some other teams to kind of fall off that they could get in, and I have no delusions that they are going to make a run and win the Stanley Cup, but I would like to see them at least get one round of playoff experience. I'm here for it. I think they can do it. Maybe I'm a cockeyed optimist, but I'm here for it. We'll change gears a little bit here. Signs of spring being in the air. The Phillies are on the diamond down in Florida for spring training. A side note here, I was a little sad to hear that Taryn Hatcher will not be back on the Comcast, NBC Sports Philly broadcast as a sideline reporter. I enjoyed her over the years. I remember watching her first when she was a Flyers reporter, also on the Phillies. She was fun, brought some interesting perspectives. I do hope that she lands on her feet and gets a gig with maybe some more national media spots there. But just another reminder of the changing face of media. They've really kind of gone away from truly good and fun sideline reporting. Remember, Greg Murphy was let go several years ago too. I wonder if it's just the cost-cutting measure or just that's the kind of programming that they're putting out there now. Tough to say. Mike Schmidt also announced that he's parting ways too. I didn't really tune in so much just because Mike Schmidt, I respect him as a player. Great, fantastic Hall of Fame talent. One of the greatest third basemen ever to play the game. Phillies World Series champion. All that said, I did find his broadcasting to be a little bit boring. Now, when you compare him to John Kruk, I mean, color commentator John Kruk is the bee's knees. He's the best, one of the best maybe to ever do it, and he's not been doing it for all that long, to be totally honest with you. But nonetheless, Phillies are taking a different direction with the broadcast team this year. Kind of sad, but change is inevitable in this world, I suppose. Spring training is underway. I'll be totally honest with you guys. I have not watched one pitch yet. Heard some good things about Andrew Painter coming up. Of course, we expect him to contribute to the big club this year. The Phillies are currently sitting at 3-7, but as we have talked about before, results don't always indicate everything in the preseason. Teams are working through their own issues. Our team is working through their issues. And so the results do not always indicate everything that's going on in the preseason. There's also the World Baseball Classic happening this offseason, so that begins this week. I think pool play begins tomorrow, Wednesday. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Nick Castellanos was released by the Phillies just before spring training started, and then promptly picked up by the San Diego Padres on a league minimum deal. So the Phillies are still on the hook for his salary, and the Padres are paying him league minimum. I'm not really all that surprised that that's how this worked out. He did absolutely nothing to up his stock last year, and realistically, what teams, even if you did call him, were going to be desperate to give you something in exchange for an outfielder who has issues at the plate, has gotten worse defensively over the years. All due respect to everything that he did for this team, he was a positive contributor for the first couple of years of his contract, but he really had dropped his stock the last couple seasons. And I didn't love the way that he spoke to the media as he left town. Kind of took absolutely zero accountability for things, and that leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. That said, I'm not going to totally rake the guy over the coals. I'm not going to say that his presence was not appreciated at certain times. But we're honestly, it's hard to say this, we're better off without him. I know the outfield situation is not what a lot of people would think is ideal, but it's better than it would be if Castellanos was still here and taking up that spot. At the very least, it opens the door for maybe somebody, Justin Crawford is the obvious name, to come up there in the outfield and maybe contribute. So I will look at this with a positive outlook and look forward to watching the World Baseball Classic. I'll probably check in here and there. It's similar to, the Olympics thing. Take a nice little break from the quote-unquote regular sports routine and watch something different where you get a bunch of players from different countries that you don't get to see all the time play. Should be fun. The Philadelphia Union have begun their seasons, the MLS Cup playoff, not the playoffs, the MLS season and the CONCACAF Champions League playoffs are open. They started actually with the Champions League, a couple of wins over Defense Force FC to advance to the round of 16, but have lost twice in MLS play to Eastern Conference rivals DC United and NYCFC. Not a great start to the MLS campaign. This is a dubious stat. They are currently leading all of the pointless teams with no points so far, due to them only having a -2 goal differential. Montreal is down in last place with a -8 goal differential through two matches so far. I guess it could be worse. However, good to see, starting off with two dominating wins over Defense Force, a team that they should have beaten. I don't know much about them, but I knew that they were not necessarily that highly ranked. So you win the games you're supposed to win, I suppose. Maybe they'll channel some sort of a European ideology where they don't care as much about the league, the MLS that is, and focus on the CONCACAF Champions League. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Another side note I wanted to mention here that's wild to me. This is the 30th season of MLS play. Not Union play, but MLS play. Wild to think that 30 years ago, that league was founded. I guess it feels odd to say that it's only been 30 years. I feel like it's a lot longer. But then also it's weird to say that the league's only been around for 30 years. You look at a lot of these soccer teams, football teams in Europe, and how they've been around for well over 100, 125 years in some cases. And the MLS soccer being a sport still trying to find its true foothold here in the United States. But 30 seasons of MLS play this year, pretty cool. And I'm here for it, even though the Union I'm not necessarily too excited about the Union season as I was maybe at the end of last year. It's cool that soccer is taking hold because it is a fun time, as you've heard me talk about before in this podcast. I enjoy the games. I enjoy watching them live. I enjoy watching them on TV. And I really hope that more people get that out of it too. And finally, rare occasion where the Eagles are the last team I talk about on this podcast, I will finish it off. You know what? I'll start with a side note on the Eagles. NFL side note here. I enjoyed the little bits of the Super Bowl that I did watch. I did not watch the vast majority of it. I did see a couple highlights on social media here and there, just because I checked in throughout the game to see what everybody else was doing and what they thought. I enjoyed the Super Bowl halftime show with Bad Bunny. I really appreciated the sets and cinematography. Of course, I didn't understand one single word that he said during the show, but that didn't really dampen my experience at all. I thought it was a really positive, fun, unique experience, and it would certainly be in my top 10 of halftime shows. Prince is always going to be number one. I think we need to stop kind of comparing halftime shows to him and just establish that he's number one and everyone else is second to him. And we could debate about who's number two for a long, long time. But certainly, if you have not watched the replay of the Bad Bunny halftime show, give it a look. You might really appreciate it if you look into what the set design was and how they coordinated the all of the moving parts there, and the camera work really added something awesome to the spectacle of it. And then back to the Eagles, back to the football on the field. I'm just really glad the Patriots didn't win. As I said, I didn't watch a ton of the game, but I was just really happy that they didn't win, because that's the last thing I wanted to see. It's I know it's only it has only been 7 years since the Patriots last won a Super Bowl. Tom Brady left, went and won another Super Bowl with another team, and oh my God, they lived in the doldrums for 6 years without a quarterback, and they were one of the worst teams in the league. Oh my, you guys have suffered so much. Get back to a Super Bowl. They kind of got lucky, as a lot of people pointed out, and I don't know. I don't like to throw dirt on people or kick people when they're down. They're not down. They just won the AFC title. Just glad the Patriots didn't win. Sam Darnold, a really cool redemption story. All that. Not mad about Seattle winning. They had a really fantastic defense. Deserved to win. Again, I didn't really watch the game, so I don't have too much perspective on that. As far as how it affects the Eagles, I don't really think that it's going to result in any kind of a drastic change to the team and what they're going to do this offseason. I don't expect them to try to copycat everything the Seahawks did. That said, they made a dramatic change by getting rid of an offensive coordinator in Kevin Patullo, who was largely under the Nick Sirianni, if you want to call it that, school of thought, and someone who maybe is more in the Kyle Shanahan type school of thought as far as running an offense, and really letting Kevin Mannion, oh my God, it did it again, Sean Mannion, come in and hire his own guys and put his own stamp on this thing. That's going to be an exciting difference to see as we go into next year. There's been a little bit of discourse about Dallas Goedert over the whole offseason, but really this past week, will he stay? Will he go? He's, of course, not under contract currently, and if they re-sign him, that will certainly dictate what they do in the draft and in free agency. But I'm not going to speculate too much on that. I honestly, you guys know from listening to this podcast, if you have before, I typically check out this time of year. I have a list of things I'd like to see the Eagles do, but I try not to worry too much over the speculation. I trust Howie Roseman. Another thing that I heard and just saw in passing was rumblings about Max Crosby possibly getting out of Oakland this week. I'll wait and see what happens. I'm not going to put too much energy into worrying about that. The Combine is over, happened last week, and NFL free agency begins March 11th. And big news for me personally, the NFL Draft is here in Pittsburgh starting April 23rd, and that whole weekend. I will be here. I will not be necessarily attending the draft, but I will be in and around it. My friends and my running group have a bunch of events around it. We're gonna go have some fun and see the sights. It is something that's like truly unique. You don't get to experience very often. I did experience it once when I was in Philly. It was kind of a nightmare because of my job. It could potentially be a nightmare this time, also because of my job. But it is nonetheless fun to see a whole bunch of people come together for a spectacle like this that only happens once a year in one city every year, and it doesn't happen in your city every year. So really cool. Looking forward to the NFL offseason. As I said, I'm not going to dedicate too much of my time and energy worrying about what the Eagles do until I actually see it happen. I'm past that phase of my life where I need to worry about that type of stuff. That's all the actual content I have for you on this episode of the Way Outta Here podcast. I do appreciate you swinging by. I'll outro the beer that I mentioned at the top of the show. I chose for this episode, the month of March, the Irish Coffee Cream Ale. Yes, St. Patrick's Day is on the horizon. I know that people get a little ridiculous around that particular time of year. I'm not necessarily the most Irish of Irish people. I got some in my heritage, but I figured I'd pick a seasonally appropriate beer for you guys. The Irish Coffee Cream Ale by Southern Tier Brewing Company is smooth and sessionable ale. It brings the cozy charm of its namesake drink, the notes of rich coffee and vanilla blend with toasted grain for a silky cream finish. Light-bodied but full-flavored, it's a perfectly balanced twist on a classic, comforting, festive, and easy to enjoy. I would add, at only 5.5% alcohol by volume, it's very easily drinkable, and you can have a few of these without getting too crunk right away. 12 IBU, not too bitter. The coffee, not overpowering. It's one of my biggest concerns when I have a coffee-flavored beer or any kind of beer with coffee in it. Is the coffee going to be overpowering? Do they make it too sweet? This was not. Very light, very refreshing, enjoyable. You could even start your day with a couple of these and really enjoy yourself. So yeah, check out the Irish Coffee Cream Ale from Southern Tier. They do ship pretty regularly to most everywhere that you might be listening to this podcast. Highly recommend you check it out. You'll enjoy it. That will do it for this episode of the Way Outta Here podcast. I appreciate you swinging by. If you don't already, subscribe to me on the social media platform of your choice on Facebook and Instagram, Way Outta Here Podcast. On Blue Sky, Way Outta Here Pod. On the blog, wayoutaherepodcast.blogspot.com. And if you have any feedback, please send an email to wayoutaherepodcast@gmail.com. This is available wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple and Spotify. A rating would be great, and on Apple, a review would be even greater. Thank you so much in advance. Until next time, be safe in whatever it is that you do.